That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, the entire landscape has changed. I mean, with this free agency period, we have seen teams that we had no idea were going to be desperate for receivers. I mean, a team like the Green Bay Packers, all of a sudden, they are probably the top wide receiver landing spot that we have seen in the past 5 seasons for these NFL draft prospects. So I'm going to be excited to go through and give y'all an updated Dynasty rookie mock draft, but we're putting a twist on it in that I'm just finding a random mock draft that I can on the internet. And of course, you may not agree with the mock draft that I am referencing. You may say, oh, Mason, there's no way in hell that Sam Howell goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers at pick 20, which, trust me, I understand. It's probably unlikely that that happens, but we need to acknowledge that really we are not going to be the general managers for these teams. We are not going to be able to just go through with our own mock drafts and say, okay, yeah, definitely Breece Hall going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's check that box, so on and so on. I mean, we always see every single year that our expectations may not necessarily be reality. So I think it's a good idea to use this as an exercise to have us illustrate how our rookie rankings may change with the NFL draft. But of course, you know what I'm going to say. Before we get into it, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, and I think that should be it. Of course, you can leave a comment letting me know why I am so stupid, but let's dive into this, and let's go with the 101 Breece Hall, the consensus 101 at this point. I mean, this is a running back that looks like he has the prospect profile of someone like Jonathan Taylor, of someone like Ezekiel Elliott. If you're looking at his dominance at Iowa State, combined with the fact that he has that adequate BMI that we were desperately hoping for, and on top of this, he tested way better than we were expecting at the NFL Combine. Great pass-catching running back as well. But in this mock draft, he goes at pick 40 to the Seattle Seahawks. Now, with Seattle, they decided to bring back Rashad Penny this season. Now, I will say, just because they brought back Rashad Penny, that doesn't necessarily make it where all of a sudden Seattle's not a team that can go out there and take another running back. Because if you look at the contract situations for both Rashad Penny and Chris Carson, his deal in 2023 is completely voidable. I think they only have to pay him a $1.5 million settlement, or whatever you may call it, to get completely out of that contract. And then with Rashad Penny, he has no money next year. That was just a 1-year deal for 2022. So if you're looking at this Seattle Seahawks team, really, they have no significant running back on the roster next offseason. So if they are at pick 40, which it's possible Breece Hall falls there after the NFL Combine, I want to say there's an outside chance that Breece Hall does end up going at the back end of the first round. I mean, Breece Hall was a much better running back prospect than Najee Harris. I mean, he was right there, probably a better running back prospect than Travis Etienne. He was a better running back prospect than Javonte Williams. 2 of those guys ended up going in the first round. Javonte Williams was a top 40 pick that a team traded up to go out there and grab. So I think that it's a real possibility, especially knowing that the running backs behind Breece Hall, I mean, it's a massive teardrop. It's a real possibility that he does end up going round 1, but if he were to fall to pick 40, you can see the Seattle Seahawks taking him. I would imagine this would be similar to a Javonte Williams situation his rookie season, where maybe you're having to deal with Rashad Penny / Melvin Gordon this past year for Javonte Williams for the majority of his rookie year. But in the case of a Rashad Penny injury, all of a sudden Breece Hall becomes that 3-down every down running back, which we've seen a handful of Rashad Penny injuries throughout his NFL career. Same thing can be said about Chris Carson. So while this wouldn't be an ideal landing spot, we know this is a team that wants to run the ball. I'd be fine with Breece Hall here. He would still be my 101. And a player that went to the same exact team is going to be the 102, and this is going to be Malik Willis. Now, with Malik Willis, he went at pick 9 to the Seattle Seahawks in this draft. And keep in mind, Seattle, after they traded away Russell Wilson, they have a ton of draft capital to work with this offseason and next offseason as well. I'll say, if you were of the opinion that the Seattle Seahawks had to kind of break it down, that they had to go into rebuild, they got a fair package. They got what they needed for Russell Wilson. And with this 9th pick, if they were to bring in Malik Willis, just look at the situation he's stepping into. Now, you're not expecting Malik Willis to go to this team and all of a sudden then be a top 5 to top 10 team in the NFL with their passing attempts. Of course, that's not going to happen. It looks like Seattle's probably wanting to skew a little bit more run heavy than what we have seen with the team in recent years. Now, what I would say is, let's look at Malik Willis in the light that he is the perfect fantasy football quarterback, as we always talk about. This is someone that his junior year, I believe he had almost 100 rushing yards on a per game basis. And let's remember Lamar Jackson, the breakout season for Lamar, where he broke fantasy football. I am, of course, not saying Malik Willis is going to be the quarterback 1 overall and then he is going to be Lamar Jackson. Of course, I'm not saying that, or I would have him ranked at the 101 ahead of Breece Hall. But I think he can be a poor man's version of that. And back then, when Lamar Jackson did break fantasy football, in Baltimore, they were the number 1 team in the NFL with their run plays per game. They were really not looking to throw the ball at all with Lamar Jackson. And I think you could see that to a similar effect with Malik Willis in Seattle. But with the efficiency you should get from DK Metcalf, from Tyler Lockett, keep in mind, Noah Fant there as well. And in this mock draft, Breece Hall ended up there. Plus the rushing upside, I think Malik Willis would be a fine 102. I think he would have the upside of a top 10 guy his rookie season. Now, let's go over to a player that ends up going to the best landing spot possible. Treylon Burks, pick 28 by the Green Bay Packers. Now, I'll say, I would be very surprised if Treylon Burks made it to pick 28 by the Green Bay Packers, because if Green Bay really likes Treylon Burks, they're going to be taking him with that Raiders selection. They're not going to make him really wait there until pick 28, because clearly this team is desperate for any wide receiver help that they can get. Even if they were to go out there, sign Julio Jones, sign Jarvis Landry, sign one of these lingering free agents that maybe they've brought those guys in by the time you're watching this video. Still, you can't have, best case scenario, Julio Jones, Will Fuller as your wide receiver 1, and Allen Lazard as your wide receiver 2 on this team. The departure of Davante Adams is opening up over 30% of the available targets in Green Bay. Over 30% of the available targets in Green Bay are now up for grabs. And with Treylon Burks, we have seen, all offseason now, that possibly the NFL is actually a little bit lower on Treylon Burks than dynasty managers, which I'm fine with. Y'all know at the running back position, at the quarterback position, in my opinion, that would be a major red flag when so much production is predicted based on draft capital for quarterback and running back. At receiver, it really isn't. If you're the first wide receiver off the board versus the third wide receiver off the board, it really doesn't matter. And what we need to be focusing in on is the production profile for that player coming out of school. And let me pull up exactly what we have from Treylon Burks. I know we have talked about this a ton, but this is a wide receiver that is dominated on a per game basis, especially with his receiving yards in the context of this Arkansas offense. Now, of course, if you're just looking at his receiving yards per game, it's not going to be that impressive. If you compare it to someone like Garrett Wilson, his last year at Ohio State, it's kind of whatever. But keep in mind, at Arkansas, this passing offense was horrible, so we need to be taking that context into effect, and we need to look at the fact that he had 43% of their receiving yards on a per-game basis his final year there. He broke out as a true freshman. He's declaring after 3 seasons. I know the 40-yard dash time at a 4.55 isn't exactly what we were hoping for, but I am more inclined to lean on the production measurables than I am with the athletic testing for these wide receivers. And not to mention, in this mock draft, he got Aaron Rodgers. He got the Green Bay Packers. Nothing more you can ask for. And now let's go down to our second wide receiver. Someone that is really hard to evaluate with this landing spot was going to be Drake London, pick 13 to the Houston Texans. Now, with Drake London, I'll even throw in our next guy. Our next guy, Garrett Wilson, went at pick 11 to the Washington football team. And obviously, Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver 1 off the board in the NFL draft, our wide receiver 3 in this Dynasty rookie draft. You'll know I care about draft capital, but at wide receiver, it's not nearly as predictive as it is at other positions. And here with Drake London, I was evaluating this Houston Texans situation compared to what you have in Washington. And honestly, I know it's crazy. I would prefer to see a wide receiver land up in Houston. Now, of course, year one's going to be gross for Drake London in Houston. Even if you are a Davis Mills fan, which I don't think you should be, you should still be looking at the Houston Texans saying, well, at the end of the day, are we really wanting a piece of this passing offense? Especially when Brandon Cooks is going to be staying there, especially when Brandon Cooks, we have seen, is a more than capable receiver to go out there and get 25% of his team's targets. It would be no doubt a bad landing spot for Drake London year one. But if you're looking beyond that, with the package that this team got for Deshaun Watson, with this team having the cap space to be able to fill in talent by not having to sign Watson to that mega deal, for this team to pick up 3 additional first-round selections, and for this team to project to be very bad this upcoming season, they will be in play for someone like CJ Stroud. They'll be in play for someone like Bryce Young in next year's draft class. And with Brandon Cooks aging out of that contract and with a young team around him, I'd be surprised if they try to bring back Brandon Cooks, someone drafted in 2014. So I'd imagine the situation for Drake London outside of his rookie season would be much better than someone like Garrett Wilson. Where if we look at Garrett Wilson, I think both these players are very comparable prospects. They both have their positives, their negatives. Drake London, if you're looking at a pure number standpoint with the production, definitely a lot better than Garrett Wilson. But with Garrett Wilson, you have to take into account that he was playing alongside the number 1 wide receiver in that 2023 draft class, as well as Chris Olave this past season. So you have to have that context with it. I think they're very comparable. But with Garrett Wilson going over to Washington, Terry McLaurin is not Brandon Cooks. He's not going to age out of this offense after a season. And with this team as well, I don't necessarily think that they are going to be able to get that guaranteed upgrade at the quarterback position in 2023, because I'm not a fan of Carson Wentz. I've never been a big fan of Carson Wentz. But what I can say is Carson Wentz isn't going to be leading this Washington team with a great defense and with a great just supporting cast around him. He's not going to be leading this Washington team to a bottom 5 finish this year, especially with the division that he is playing in. So I would imagine that yet again, Washington is picking near the middle of the pack in the NFL draft. They're not able to get a franchise quarterback going forward. And Garrett Wilson stuck alongside Terry McLaurin, who we know is probably going to be the wide receiver 1A, wide receiver 1B on this offense. So that's why I'm viewing the Drake London landing spot in a better light than Garrett Wilson. I think both are elite level rookie wide receiver prospects. I think a lot of people are overlooking how good this rookie wide receiver class is, because overall the class is very bad. I mean, beyond Breece Hall at the running back position, beyond Malik Willis at the quarterback spot, I mean, it's really hard to get excited about anybody, but still, this is a great group of wide receivers. Love both of these guys, but I'm going to lean on Drake London with this landing spot if I have them ranked next to each other as prospects. Now, our next running back will be Kenneth Walker, pick 50 to the Miami Dolphins. And here I know Miami, they bring in a multitude of running backs. They go out there, they sign Chase Edmonds. They go out there and they sign Raheem Mostert. But real quick, that Raheem Mostert signing, it was literally nothing. They gave him no money at all. The only reason that this is a story whatsoever is Raheem Mostert had a decent playoff run about 3 seasons ago. But if you're looking at Raheem Mostert, I believe, and keep in mind, this is something I've not looked at in probably 2 years, but y'all know I have been a long time Mostert hater. I could be wrong. I believe he has about 3 games with more than 20 carries his NFL career. I am hopefully going to get fact checked on that by Thomas, but I believe he's had 3 games with more than 20 carries. As a running back that was 29 years old this past season. This is a running back that throughout his entire NFL career, this is someone that was drafted in 2015. He's played 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. He's played 7 seasons, and he's at 284 carries. I don't think Raheem Mostert is anybody that you have to worry about. Now, with Chase Edmonds, yes, he is going to have a role in this offense. Edmonds is a very talented running back. Edmonds is perfectly used in a third down role where if the running back in front of him also gets injured, then he can step in to be a primary bell cow running back for a small duration. Now, what would we see with Kenneth Walker here? Kenneth Walker is a great first and second down running back that has that athletic profile that's not a great pass catcher. So I actually think this would be the perfect fit for Kenneth Walker in this offense from an NFL standpoint. It wouldn't be good for fantasy because Chase Edmonds would be getting that third down usage. But you have Kenneth Walker as the first and second down running back, Chase Edmonds as the third down guy, Raheem Mostert backing up Kenneth Walker in that first and second down role. It wouldn't be great for fantasy, as I've said, but if you were to have an injury to Chase Edmonds, then possibly all of a sudden maybe Kenneth Walker turns into a low-end running back 1, high-end running back 2. And I think with the athleticism and the size that he has, you can talk yourself into taking him here. Now, our next guy, I have a really hard time ranking him, is going to be Sam Howell. In this mock draft, he went to the Pittsburgh Steelers at pick 20. Now, I am the first one to say that Pittsburgh can still take a quarterback. You look at the Mitchell Trubisky contract. That contract does not scream, hey, you're our guaranteed starter this year, our guaranteed starter next year. Don't worry about anything. No, Pittsburgh can still easily go with the quarterback at pick 20. Now, I personally wouldn't expect it to be Sam Howell. I'd expect it to be a couple other names before Sam Howell. I'd expect it to be Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral, maybe even Desmond Ridder. But nonetheless, this is where he went in the mock draft. Y'all know I'm not here pretending that I'm some expert quarterback scout. Really like to lean on the teams with their evaluations of the quarterback prospect. That's how we were able to hit on someone like Josh Allen, able to hit on someone like Justin Herbert when everybody and their mom was screaming that the NFL got those players wrong, when in reality, come on, the NFL front offices, they get a lot of quarterback evaluation wrong, but not nearly as much as the Dynasty community does. So here with Sam Howell, I would say he would be stepping into a very good situation once you add Trubisky gone. I would imagine that if the Pittsburgh Steelers do take a quarterback at pick 20, it's most likely going to be a scenario that we saw in Cleveland back when you had Baker Mayfield going there, where, yeah, I mean, you're going to have a different starter there for the first 2 months of the season, and then they'll transition into that rookie. So if it's Sam Howell, if it's Kenny Pickett going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's kind of whatever. I think that we are going to be taking him here after those elite level receiver prospects. You could easily make the argument to take him over Kenneth Walker, though. And now our next wide receiver probably gets one of the better landing spots you can have. Going to be Jameson Williams, pick 21, New England Patriots. Y'all know I am not a big fan of Jameson Williams by any means. I think a lot of people that have him ranked above Chris Olave are doing themselves a disservice when Chris Olave in that same offense, pretty much at that same age, I think he was only like 8 months older, went out there and dominated targets, routes run, just overall time played in the same exact offense, in the same exact situation. Jameson Williams, while yes, he had success at Alabama, it's not like he went out there and had a Devontae Smith level season where he had 45% of his team's receiving production. No, he was closer to 31%. If you look at him and John Mechie, very comparable. Now, of course, Jameson Williams has the elite level speed. Why I'm mainly drafting him here is I think it is a beautiful, beautiful situation. Going to the New England Patriots, this is a team that clearly needs wide receiver help. As it stands now, what their best looking option is going to be Jacoby Myers. You have a pretty good quarterback to build alongside next to Mac Jones. I will say, of course, the New England Patriots have probably been the worst team in the NFL for a very long time at evaluating these wide receiver prospects. It's almost funny, the curse of the New England wide receiver, despite this being one of the best run organizations in the NFL. I'm going to have him pick 21 because that landing spot, because he could be the wide receiver 1. We'll get to Chris Olave just a little bit later. Our next pick will be Kenny Pickett, pick 32 to the Detroit Lions. I'm not expecting Kenny Pickett to make it this long in the NFL draft. I would probably assume that the Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe I'm just being irrational knowing that he went to Pitt, but I would assume the Pittsburgh Steelers would go Kenny Pickett over Sam Howell if they had the option. Now, if Kenny Pickett does go to Detroit here, well, yeah, technically he's a first-round selection. If you look historically with those quarterbacks, once they get outside the top 10 picks, their hit rate just dramatically falls down. And at pick 32, you could see something interesting in that. Kenny Pickett wouldn't be guaranteed to start year 1. And if this team was bad enough to be at the top of the NFL draft and have the opportunity to take someone like Bryce Young, they'll probably do that. They'll probably pull a Josh Rosen and Kyler Murray. So not a great landing spot. Not guaranteed to start with this NFL draft capital. This team's probably bad enough to be picking high up in the 2023 draft as well. So with Kenny Pickett, I would hate this landing spot for the Detroit Lions, mainly because, I mean, how far he fell in the draft. And honestly, I think you can make the argument to take our next guy over him. Our next guy is going to be Isaiah Spiller, pick 69 to the New York Jets. Now, with the Jets, obviously, this is a team that has Michael Carter. And I think with Carter and Spiller, very comparable players, plus pass-catching running backs, never really have been bell cow options in their respective offenses. Now, with Isaiah Spiller, obviously one of the hardest falling players so far this season. However, interested to see his pro day, interested to see his 40-yard dash time. I think his pro day may actually be the day that this video is coming out. Let me pull this up just to be sure. Okay, yeah. Isaiah Spiller is going to have his pro day March 22nd. I'm recording this March 21st. So very interested. I'll probably get y'all an in-depth Isaiah Spiller prospect profile later this week. We'll talk about it more then. As for the landing spot, he'd be a committee running back with Michael Carter. I think they would almost be splitting the backfield 50-50. Now, a wide receiver that I prefer him over someone like Jameson Williams. I mean, if you go check our rankings right now, I have him over him. I have him over Sam Howell as well as Chris Olave. Now, I don't know why this mock draft had it this way, but Chris Olave goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers despite them giving the extension to Chris Godwin, despite them having Mike Evans on the roster. Maybe they're saying, you know what? This is just a Dallas Cowboys situation back in 2020 when you have Amari Cooper, you have Michael Gallup, and they're saying, well, the best player available on the board, pick 27, Chris Olave. We want to be a pass-happy team. Let's have the best 3 wide receivers set in the NFL, which I think you could easily have the argument to be made that it would be. Now, my issue is Tom Brady has 1 year left. Chris Godwin just signed that extension, and I would be surprised if Mike Evans is going anywhere anytime soon. So Chris Olave would just be so buried on this step chart, even though this would be one of the most prolific passing offenses in the NFL. I'd still be very worried about it. And now our next pick is going to be Matt Corral, pick 42 to the Indianapolis Colts. Now with Matt Corral, this is a quarterback that I know probably most people are expecting to go mid to late round 1, as I am. I don't know why they have him here. It is what it is. But if he were to go to the Indianapolis Colts, pick 42, I would imagine this would be a scenario where they probably still look to bring in a veteran quarterback. If they can get Baker, if they can get Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't think they would hold back from doing so. And I think Matt Corral could be in a very similar situation to what we were speaking with someone like Kenny Pickett, where if he goes in the second round here, if you look historically, those second round picks, they're not really guaranteed to start at the NFL level. I would be worried about that with Corral. Now our next pick is going to be George Pickens, pick 35 to the New York Jets. George Pickens, I think he would be a natural fit alongside Elijah Moore. Honestly, maybe you'd slide Elijah Moore over to the slot, have George Pickens play on the outside. Now, y'all know I'm not the biggest fan of George Pickens in the world, where people are talking about taking him over guys like Garrett Wilson, taking him over someone like Drake London, Treylon Burks. I could never get behind that. And of course, he gets great NFL draft capital here. In this draft, he's selected about 7 picks behind Treylon Burks. I see the upside with George Pickens. This is a wide receiver that dominated his his freshman season at Georgia. I mean, if I'm pulling this up, he had 27% of the receiving yards on a per game basis of this Georgia Bulldog offense. At 18 years old, that is massive. Good 40-yard dash time at a 4.47 as well. Now, his second year before he tore the ACL wasn't great. I mean, he actually took a small step backwards, accounting for 25% of his passing offense, but that true freshman season, truly special. I mean, it was very similar to someone like Justin Ross. I'd argue that Justin Ross was maybe a little bit better as a true freshman, given the fact that Justin Ross went up against T. Higgins, Travis Etienne, Amari Rodgers, and accounted for pretty much the same exact percentage of his own offense. But the difference is Justin Ross went out there and ran a 4.87, and Justin Ross has a more serious injury to go along with that. So George Pickens, I see the upside case. I do think he's a little bit of a black box prospect where maybe we're going to have to kind of wait until the NFL draft to see the kind of capital he gets. Now, our next receiver going over to the New Orleans Saints, Jahan Dotson. And with Dotson, I have him ranked essentially neck and neck, I believe, with George Pickens in our rookie rankings. Let me pull this up. The difference is he's going to get that worst landing spot going to the Saints. I mean, really, you have no idea who the Saints quarterback is going to be of the future. We're assuming that you're also going to get Michael Thomas there. I mean, with Michael Thomas there, I think that we can safely say that he would project to see more targets than what you would have with Elijah Moore. So if you're getting worse quarterback play, increased competition, as well as, I mean, less draft capital, I think you have to have Dotson behind George Pickens in this mock draft. But if you're looking at my rankings, I have Jameson Williams, Dotson, and Pickett all in the same tier. So I think that they are very landing spot and / NFL draft capital dependent, even though Jameson Williams will 100% go before these other options. Now, our last receiver is going to be Christian Watson, pick 43 to the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Christian Watson, obviously, coming out of a very small school now. What you have to like about Christian Watson is back as a sophomore, he shared a locker room with Trey Lance. And if you share a locker room with Trey Lance, you just know by rubbing elbows, by talking to the guy on a day-to-day basis, when Trey Lance is Mr. Football, I mean, some of that has to rub off on you. Some of that has to just give you some kind of ability. I mean, Trey Lance probably has more ability in his pinky finger than anybody else in the NFL. So if you're next to him, I'd imagine you get some of that. But with Christian Watson, I mean, beyond that, he did stay all 4 years, which you don't like to see, but this was the team that didn't even play in 2020. Remember, we had nothing to look at with Trey Lance due to that COVID season. And if you're looking at Christian Watson, 44% of his receiving offense, his final season there. 44%. He didn't break out till his second season. We don't have a junior year to look at, but that final year plus the 40-yard dash time plus the free size, of course, makes you excited. And here he goes to the Atlanta Falcons, a team that desperately needs a receiver. It would be interesting to have him alongside someone like Kyle Pitts, just two massive athletic freaks. I don't really know how that would work, but nonetheless, of course, thank you so much for being a part of the flock, supporting the channel. I really hope that this video was able to help you out. I really hope you're able to get something from it. Go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and have a great day.